On this Wednesday night, pumping the brakes on vehicle theft. The surge in crimes and what a national summit hopes to solve.
We have become known globally as a donor nation for stolen vehicles.
Sentenced for leaking secrets, how many years a former top RCMP official will spend in jail. Fighting for transgender rights. Students walk out to protest Alberta's new gender identity rules. And striking a chord at the Grammys.
I was astonished.
How a guitar made by a Calgary woman ended up in the hands of Tracy Chapman.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with what's being called a crisis in this country, an alarming rise in auto theft. It is skyrocketing in Canada, so much so we're becoming known around the world as an easy mark. The problem is most acute in Eastern Canada. Auto theft in Quebec was up 50% in 2022 compared to the year before. In Ontario, it was up over 48%. And it's on the rise everywhere else, too. It is highly lucrative, and the stolen vehicles are often quickly shipped overseas. Today, on the eve of a summit on auto theft, the public safety minister promised help to detect and search shipping containers. Abigail Bimman has our top story tonight.
It looks like they were in and out within 10 minutes.
It's a nightmare familiar to too many Canadians. Kevin McDonald's SUV was stolen from his driveway in the middle of the night. It took about $2,000 and months to get it back, making him one of the lucky ones. He works in the auto industry and has plenty of ideas to share when he attends the National Car Theft Summit hosted by the federal government in Ottawa Thursday.
Obvious solutions. I mean, improving the amount of employees that CBSA has, looking at reciprocal agreements with various policing agencies.
Better collaboration tops the list for many advocacy groups as stories pile up of people with trackers finding their stolen cars but unable to get them back due to jurisdiction issues, as well as a call for stricter reporting rules for cars leaving the country.
There's no silver bullet. There's multiple things that have to happen collectively, and I think that's where we'll see the biggest impact is everybody coming together and taking action.
Eager to show they're taking action, late Wednesday ahead of the summit, the federal government tried to address these concerns by announcing $28 million for the CBSA to find and search containers with stolen vehicles.
The agency will explore new detection technology solutions and the use of advanced analytical tools such as artificial intelligence.
That announcement overlaps with what the opposition has been calling for days.
Secure our ports and lock up the car thieves.
Thursday brings together different levels of government, auto and insurance stakeholders, and police.
We have become known globally as a donor nation for stolen vehicles.
With so much of the problem linked to organized crime.
High reward, low risk. It funds the guns and the gangs and the drugs that are coming into the country, and it's a crime of opportunity, and it allows them to make some serious money very quickly and with very little recourse.
The Liberals are promising more news to come from Thursday's summit, both around technology to make cars harder to steal and around better resources for Canadian police to work with Interpol, with so many of these stolen cars ending up overseas. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
A former high-level RCMP intelligence official found guilty of leaking top-secret information to police targets has been sentenced to 14 years in prison. An Ontario Superior Court judge today said the actions of Cameron Ortis not only undermine Canada's reputation, they potentially put lives at risk. Ortis was arrested in 2019, and with credit for time served, he will spend another 7 years in jail. Touria Izri reports on the sentencing and the reaction.
Cameron Ortis knew the consequences of telling Canada's secrets. That's what the judge said in his sentencing. And Ortis will pay for those consequences. 7 years in jail.
We thought this conduct was deserving of a sentence that far exceeded the sentence imposed by the trial judge.
The Crown wanted 28 years minus time served.
Mr. Cameron Ortis betrayed the RCMP. He betrayed our domestic intelligence partners. Mr. Cameron Ortis effectively compromised the trust that Canada has earned.
Justice Robert Moranger also called it a betrayal, but thought 28 years was too harsh, despite agreeing Ortis violated his position of extreme trust and that his actions potentially put lives at risk. Ortis was arrested in 2019 for trying to sell classified information to a cybercriminal and suspected money launderers. At the time, he was one of the highest-ranking civilian members of the RCMP.
He had access to some fairly highly classified technical information on communications and communications intercepts. So did he do damage? Yes, I'm sure he did.
The judge called Ortis somewhat of an enigma. Witnesses described his work ethic and intelligence. Michael Kovrig, one of the two Michaels jailed in China, was a friend and sent a letter of support to the judge. The defense had argued for no jail time and now plans to appeal.
Obviously disappointed. We were hoping to have a significantly lower sentence, but I understand where Justice Moranger came from. He was given a difficult task to choose between two very different extremes.
While the trial is now over, the judge says Canada's reputation may never recover, saying that Ortis's actions undermine Canada's credibility among its Five Eyes intelligence sharing partners, since Ortis had access to their secrets as well. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
There is an update on a special police task force investigating a wave of extortion attempts targeting the South Asian community in Peel region west of Toronto. Police revealed 24 charges have been laid in relation to 29 extortion attempts dating back to November of 2023. A variety of businesses, including restaurants, bakeries and jewelry stores, were targeted, all with South Asian owners.
9 of the incidents have involved shootings with multiple rounds being fired.
There are similar trends that we've been seeing in Alberta and as well as lower mainland British Columbia, as well as in certain locations in the U.S.
Peel police say they are working with investigators in those provinces. 5 suspects have been arrested in connection with 3 alleged incidents across the Greater Toronto area since the task force was set up in December. While there have been no reported injuries, Peel police say South Asian business owners are being threatened with violence unless they hand over cash or money transfers. Toronto police have identified a 3rd suspect in the shooting death of an innocent bystander last July. 19-year-old Ahmed Ali is now wanted for manslaughter and robbery with a firearm.
There was a physical altercation between 3 males that we believe was a robbery, and it escalated into violence when 2 men brandished handguns and exchanged gunfire.
44-year-old Carolina Hubner-Makarat was walking in Toronto's Leslieville neighborhood when a bullet hit her. Homicide detectives believe Ali fled to Somalia shortly after the shooting. A Canada-wide warrant is out for his arrest and Interpol is involved. Canada does not have an extradition treaty with Somalia. 3 other people are also facing charges in that case. The RCMP says a Montreal man has been charged with threatening to kill Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. 30-year-old Paul Clarisseau appeared in court today. RCMP say the threats were made on the social media platform X and investigated by the force's National Security Enforcement Team. The force says it's not the first time they've investigated threats against Trudeau and that the threats have increased since the pandemic. The federal opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, has weighed into Alberta's controversial planned rule changes for transgender youth. When asked today if he's against the use of puberty blockers for people under the age of 18, he said yes.
I think that we should protect children and their ability to make adult decisions when they are adults.
The fact that Premier Smith and Pierre Poilievre want government to take away the option for parents and their vulnerable youth in consultation with their doctors to make the right decisions for them is anchored in ideology and is not about protecting the most vulnerable.
In Alberta, backlash against Premier Danielle Smith's planned gender policies is growing. Today, hundreds of students across the province walked out of class in protest. Heather Yourex-West reports on the polarizing policy proposal.
At 10 a.m., high school students across Alberta joined the chorus of those opposed to a suite of policies proposed by the Alberta government restricting transgender rights.
I know trans kids, like little kids, and I want to make sure that their growing up into a world that's safe and that accepts them.
The Premier of Alberta has said that the policies restricting access to puberty-blocking therapy for those under 16 and to gender-affirming surgery for those under 18 are designed to protect children from making decisions they would later regret, citing the experience of Lois Cardinal, a First Nations woman who underwent bottom surgery at the age of 21.
I remember waking up in the surgical suite saying, "What have I done?"
While medical professionals, the Alberta Teachers Association, and transgender support organizations were not consulted in drafting Alberta's policy, Cardinal, who on her social media accounts frequently refers to transgenderism as a mental disorder, was consulted by the United Conservative Party.
I support it. And then there's others within the community that don't, and I understand that, but this is the first step.
But this transgender man, whose identity we've agreed to protect over safety concerns, disagrees. He received top surgery at the age of 15, a procedure he believes saved his life.
If these policies were enacted like 7 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do any of the things that I did. I think that I probably would have committed suicide had it happened then.
While each point of view represents an individual lived experience, medical evidence indicates cases involving regret are exceedingly rare. Studies show it to be between 1% and 2%, and that the benefits to the mental health of transgender youth outweigh the risk.
It creates a false debate. So when you sort of call into question the medical evidence and say, actually, like, you shouldn't be receiving care, like there isn't agreement on this. And in terms of the puberty suppression and, you know, that intervention, like we have a lot of consensus. Actually, it's not a debate.
Which is why those opposed to the policies say they'll keep fighting to protect transgender rights. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Israel has flat out rejected a proposed ceasefire in its war on Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying there is no solution but a complete and total victory. The war, now into its 4th month, will continue, and Israeli forces will push further into southern Gaza. It's not the result the U.S. Secretary of State wanted. He is back in Israel trying to find a way to end the bloodshed. The U.S. provides Israel with tens of billions of dollars in economic and military aid. But as Crystal Gamansing reports, American influence over what happens next seems limited.
Operational success is what Israel's prime minister is focused on, not peace. Benjamin Netanyahu says the war on Hamas and Gaza could last months longer, but that victory is within reach. I would like to emphasize again that there is no solution other than total victory. If Hamas survives in Gaza, it is only a matter of time until the next massacre. A definitive rejection by Netanyahu to a Hamas counter-proposal to pause fighting, a proposal that had the U.S. Secretary of State once again crisscrossing the Middle East, meeting with key players.
While there are some clear non-starters in Hamas's response, we do think it creates space for agreement to be reached.
The Hamas proposal had laid out 3 phases, with fighting paused for 45 days at each stage. Israeli women, males under 19, and sick and elderly hostages would be released in Phase 1 in exchange for the release of Palestinian women and children held in Israeli jails and the withdrawal of Israeli soldiers from populated areas in Gaza. Families of Israelis taken hostage on October 7th have been fighting to keep their loved ones' fate front and center.
My mom was released without a deal. She was released because of humanitarian reasons. And there is nothing stopping Hamas from releasing more people.
Her father, she says, is frail and has spent 4 months in captivity in Gaza.
I hope that he has the strength. It's very hard to survive something when you're frail.
Some Israelis have expressed fear that the fighting means there will be no hostages left alive. Netanyahu says IDF operations will move south into Rafah with the aim of demilitarizing Gaza. Rafah is where more than 1 million displaced Gazans are taking refuge. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Still digging out from a mammoth snowstorm. Coming up, the pleas for more plows as patience in Cape Breton runs thin. Coast Guard officer cadets are being called in to help people in Cape Breton dig out from a record snowfall over the weekend. Many people are still trapped in their homes. The provincial and federal governments are promising help, but as Heidi Petracek reports, it's not happening fast enough.
About 100 officer cadets from the Canadian Coast Guard College in Sydney hit the snowy streets to dig residents out after they dug their own way off campus.
And if we had difficulties getting out of our own college, imagine how much people are having trouble getting their own homes.
Their efforts greeted with relief.
Because now I can go to my medical appointments and I can get out faster.
Many hands make lighter work, but the job is massive. There are residents throughout Cape Breton still blocked in, especially in rural areas.
We did not have the equipment to deal with this so fast, so furious.
Snow completely blocks the driveway at the home of Terry Mathis and Patsy Geisler, their vehicles buried. They're on a list to be bulldozed out from their Albert Bridge home, hopefully in the next 24 hours.
We have a friend, her mother is very ill. They have a really long driveway, and they're right in Sydney River and can't get anybody to plow their... So if something happens to Mom, there's nothing anybody can do.
We still have residents that are not plowed out yet. There's communities that are not plowed out yet.
The province says 40 extra pieces of equipment are now in Cape Breton, but Cape Breton Regional Municipality Councillor Gordon McDonald says they need much more.
I don't know why we don't have the reserves in to at least look at the situation. We have a very serious situation here. The military would go a long way.
As it did after post-tropical storm Fiona, but this time Ottawa hasn't gone that far.
Whatever the province has requested from us, we've been there, but the problem is you can't buy a snowblower right now in Cape Breton.
4 days since the storm hit and counting, there is so much digging left to do and more anxious waiting for those still stuck as time goes on. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Ahead, turmoil in Pakistan after deadly bombings on the eve of an election. Pakistan is on edge tonight after 2 bombings near the offices of candidates on the eve of that country's general election. More than 26 people were killed, at least 50 others injured. The blasts happened 150 kilometers apart in the country's southwest. The first rocked the election campaign office of an independent candidate. Less than an hour later, there was a blast at an election office for the country's ultra-conservative party. The so-called Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for both bombings. Pakistan's election has been marred by violence and claims of poll rigging. Russia launched a series of airstrikes across Ukraine early today, killing at least 5 civilians. At least 3 major cities were hit, including the capital, Kyiv, and more than 40 people were injured. The European Union's top diplomat was in Kyiv at the time discussing military aid and financial support for Ukraine. More Western help is needed by Ukraine, which has shortages of ammunition and personnel as the fight against Russia approaches its 2nd anniversary. Some good news for a pod of orcas that appeared to be trapped in drift ice off Japan's northern island. Japanese officials monitoring the killer whales say they've managed to escape. Drone footage from Tuesday shows about a dozen orcas clustered together in a small opening in the ice, poking their heads up to breathe. They were spotted by a local fisherman about a kilometer off Hokkaido, and they're gone now. It's believed they made it out through gaps in the ice. And this stunning photo of a young polar bear sleeping on a floating chunk of ice has won 2023's Wildlife Photographer of the Year People's Choice Award. It was taken off the coast of Svalbard, Norway by an amateur photographer from the UK. Organizers of the competition call it breathtaking and poignant and say it allows us to see the beauty and fragility of our planet. Hitting a high note next, the Calgary connection to Tracy Chapman's Grammy performance. Millions of people were captivated watching the Grammys on Sunday, especially the magical moment when Tracy Chapman, who hardly ever performs anymore, appeared on stage playing her hit song Fast Car. One woman in Calgary couldn't quite believe her eyes. The acoustic guitar Chapman was playing was the one that Calgary woman had made by hand years ago. Carolyn Curry de Castillo has the story of how it got there.
Music has always been a passion for Judy Threet, but it wasn't until the former philosophy professor started making instruments that her talent hit a high note.
A friend of mine that I was in a folk club house band with built an archtop guitar for me. So I started hanging around at his studio while he was building it, and I got hit. I got the bug for building.
Soon after, she quit academics and switched careers.
I went into the department office and rescinded my application for the next year and said, no, I think I'm going to take some time off and build some guitars.
In 1999, she crafted a guitar and tried to sell it in Calgary with no luck. She ended up shipping it to a music store in Palo Alto, California. It was there that a certain folk musician by the name of Tracy Chapman walked into the store looking for a smaller guitar.
And he just reached over and handed her that one, and she eventually left the store with it.
That was in 2001. Over the past 20 years, Tracy Chapman wasn't a household name anymore. Me, myself, I got nothing to. But her song, Fast Car, was on the charts again when covered by country artist Luke Combs. On Sunday, they performed the song together at the Grammys in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, back in Calgary, the retired guitar maker gets an email from a friend saying he's spotted Judy's guitar. Tracy Chapman strumming it on stage for the world to see.
I was astonished, and I've seen pictures every once in a while of her playing it, but you know, she's sort of dropped out of performing, and so I didn't know if she still had it. I mean, I'm hoping that she's hung on to it because it's sort of become a trusted friend. And if that's the case, then that's wonderful, because that's sort of what everybody hopes for when they're building guitars.
Carolyn Curry de Castillo, Global News.
What a story. That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is this seagull in Picton, Ontario. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.